This is Phantom Electric Ghost, and we're live on the air for the first time with David Kennedy, online body transformation expert. Welcome to the Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing?
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you for having me.
If you can see up there, there's an icon that says "Listen on Newsly." They are a sponsor. For those of you that are listening, you can use the coupon code GHOST to receive one free month of that audio service. It's a podcast service, and we are a featured podcast. Later tonight, we'll be featured as audio only on Newsly. And I want to let people know we are also happy to be at episode 1008 of the Family Electric Ghost podcast, tracking that on Apple Podcasts since 2016. And for those of you also, we have your Instagram, which is www.instagram.com/Dave_Kennedy_TLB. That will be fully clickable when we're published on all the major platforms. So you'll be able to click through and get right to Dave's Instagram from there. And tonight we're going to be talking about unlocking your full potential, how Dave Kennedy empowers clients to achieve weight loss success. So after unpacking all that, again, welcome to the show. And how are you doing today? Again,
Absolutely great, man. Really happy to be here. Really happy to be on.
so you've been an online fat loss expert, and you're from Ireland. And you've been talking about your experience of your grief. You lost losing your sister, which resulted you in gaining weight, and then you lost a
Yeah,
lot of weight. And maybe you can kind of tell that story in your own words. But I was just giving the audience a brief kind of overview.
yeah, 100%. So I guess starting from the very start, when my sister was alive, we come from a hard-working family back here in Ireland. We're farming here, so we're farmers, and we're publicans, so we've a bar as well. So not the best mix, late nights, early mornings. So, but
Hmm.
very hardworking. Our family is very close. Everything kind of circulated around food. Food is a huge contributor in everyone's family. It's a sign of love. It's a sign of care, sharing. And for me, I was always hardworking, and I was never on the thin side. Being honest, I was always maybe, you know, roughly around say 100 kilos, so maybe around 200 pounds, maybe 190 or so. But I was tall enough and 6'2". So all along, we played rugby. It was a sport. It's a sport here in Ireland. Very similar to, you probably know it. It's like American football. Just American football is way cooler. um, so I always had a place. I guess why I'm getting at that is there's the forwards and there's backs, and the forwards are always kind of on the heavier side, and they have a place there. And when I was going through high school, coming from 14, 15, 16 years old, I always felt like I had a place there. So I had that level of acceptance, if that made sense, because my friends were a little bit heavy, and we all had a place, we had a meaning to be there. So it just made things feel an awful lot. It made me feel safe, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So I guess the first, I suppose, major inkling where I thought my weight was an issue was when we started going out partying, underage, to be honest. But I could always see all the girls used to go for the backs, the thin guys with the abs. And that
Hmm.
was the first kind of inkling I've ever got that, maybe it's not so important. Maybe it's not right to be this size, and that was the first kind of inkling. And for me, like I said, food was always a strong part of our life, and food was, I suppose, a safe place for me. So if I was ever triggered, if I was ever feeling bad, I'd always turn to food.
Hmm.
And that's kind of a sign of emotional eating. So a lot of people can resonate with that. So not understanding that, I would have ate a little bit more because of that, not understanding it. And that was true, say, 2009. And then in 2010, I tragically lost my sister in a car accident. And that obviously turned our world upside down, to be quite honest. I was 16 and a half, going on 17, and there was a few years of, anyone can imagine, or anyone that's listening, it's if it's grief or it's misfortune, I felt like I was coasting for a couple of years, to be quite honest. Just sometimes when I think back right now, I don't even remember some parts of it, I'll just be honest. And I guess a huge anchor for me was food.
It
You
just
know,
like made
it's
you feel good. I mean,
yeah,
it was like calming, soothing, and it probably
it,
was your go-to, um,
absolutely,
you know, thing to make you feel better. And some people use other things, but like anything can be
absolutely.
a problem. Like food, people will say, well, food's not alcohol, food's not this, but food still can affect your health. You could affect your
Oh,
body and affect your mind and your heart, right? So you end up having
100%,
a consequence. And
100%. Like sometimes I say I'm very thankful that, you know, food was my poison, because we have alcohol, we have drugs, we've gambling, you know, we have online betting. Everyone
yeah,
has their poison, if that makes sense. So for me, it could have went down an awful worse route, if that makes sense.
yeah,
So sometimes I always look
definitely.
back and I'm always thankful that yes, I went from, you know, maybe 190 to 330 pounds in that space in between, you know, a couple of years. Um, but I'm looking back now, I'm very thankful, because my life could have been a lot different, you know, and that's just the truth of it, being quite honest. But you know, food for me, going through that, it's that was like my safety net, or that was my level of that was like my safe place.
Mhm.
And you know, when you're going through, you know, I'd be honest, like I was probably the bold one in the family. You know, I was the mid one, the middle guy. I was the middle one in the family. I have a younger brother, and my sister was older. My sister was an angel. She never put anything out of place, and I was the one who might have got into trouble, or you know, things like that. And I was like, why her? Like, why was she taken? You know, and there was a level of anger there for a long time, and that triggering me caused that to eat more. You know, and
Did you,
that was
yeah.
all. Yeah, so
Did you
that
feel
was
guilt
the
about that? Did you feel guilt thinking like, well,
yeah,
why you kind of mentioned like, why wasn't it you? Why was it her?
yeah.
So did that kind of create this guilt in your head? It's like you're
Oh
not
yeah,
responsible, but it's like that you
one hundred
still
percent.
can feel however you feel, right? And that causes you to get in that cycle.
Absolutely. You know, it's a guilt, anger. You know, not understanding why. And I went through that for, you know, 3 to 4 years without, you know, just not understanding, because sometimes, you know, this is life. You know, sometimes we can't put in place what is to come, or what happens, or what misfortune can happen to us in life. And you know, for me, it was just going through that, like you said, that guilt, anger, and just not understanding. And for me as well, it was like food was always that place where it used to kind of make me just not think, if that made sense, you know.
It was like
And
a safe. It was like your safety net. It's like your safe zone. Like
yeah, it was like a crutch.
yeah. I mean, I'm a cook. I cook. I bake,
Yeah,
and I became a diabetic later
yeah,
in life, and I had
yeah,
to really change because like
yeah,
baking was a comfort to me. The actual
of course.
baking cookies and
The
desserts,
process.
and I
Yeah,
love doing it. But it's
yeah,
like
the process.
after
Yeah,
became a diabetic, I couldn't really eat what I cooked. I
yeah,
had to just enjoy cooking and let it
yeah.
go and give it to other people, and
Yes,
then not
yes,
go and eat all the bread and the cakes and the pies and all that stuff. And I had to relearn, and it was kind of
for
like I had to
sure.
reprogram my head. Like I can still like to bake, but I can't eat all this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. It can be very difficult, you know, and especially like it's when we don't see the consequences sometimes, you know, that's when it either can be too late, or I wouldn't say the damage is done, but we might be just gone a step too far. And that was even for me, you know, at 20 years of age, when I was at my heaviest, you know, we're in college at the time. And for me, I used to live with a best friend of mine in college, and he used to go to college, and I used to say that I'd have a class an hour later, but I actually would have a class at the same time. I wouldn't go to college, and I'd stay at home and eat, you know.
Mhm.
And it was like I used to have the most comfort when no one used to see me, because when people were around, I was fine. I didn't need anything, but it was when no one was watching me that's when it was like in my zone of eating.
Uh,
It was like a secret
yeah,
a
it's
secret
kind of like
eating.
yeah, that can happen with some alcoholics. They drink
Yeah,
at home. They drink alone.
yeah.
You can see the
It's
same kind
like
of behaviors of different types of addictions.
absolutely. It's like I didn't want to be. It was like there was no shame, if that made sense. You know, it's like no one could
Yeah,
see it. so no one would know
Yeah.
the difference. And you know, for me, going through that year of college, going through grief, it didn't, you know, my emotion, it was just numb, to be quite honest with you. You know, so it never it never made me think about my weight or think about everything, because I was just kind of frustrated with life, if that made sense. You know, but coming from off the, I suppose, all the negative side of it really is, you know, there was a couple of things that like saved me as well. You know, for me, I'm into cars. Cars is a big passion of mine. You know,
Hmm.
so cars was something that's very special to me even to this day, because that kind of, in a way, saved me, because I massed a lot of that energy with food and cars. So I used to buy and sell cars. I used to modify cars, do them up. And that
Hmm.
was like a huge passion that was able to mask some of that grief away. And I put like hours into that, into evenings, and but it was like a habit, you know, especially in Ireland, and in the US to be very similar. It's a lot of guys, especially in Ireland, it's, you know, they smoke fags and smoke cigarettes, and they meet late at night and they chill out and have a chat and might get food or go somewhere and eat as well. And that was kind of that's kind of the lingo with cars as well. So it was a little bit unhealthy as well. And most of these guys didn't really play sport as well. It was like they gave up the kind of the sport, and the cars was a passion of theirs. And that was kind of wasn't as healthy as well. So for me, it was, you know, working late at night in the garage,
Hmm.
and you know, might get a takeout afterwards, or get a pizza afterwards, and eating late. And it was just
Yeah.
it wasn't the healthiest. It wasn't the
Not a
healthiest,
good
but
habit. Yeah. 'Cause you're kind of like so focused on the car that you're not
yeah,
eating like the most healthy dinner at the right
yeah,
time.
oh
Probably
yeah,
for the wrong cycle, your body getting all kind of screwed up because you're kind of
for
just
sure.
eating all this kind of junk just because you're focusing on, you know, fixing the cars, you know,
Yeah,
or tweaking the cars, or just like being so upset. Like we had a lot of people into muscle cars. We
yeah,
got a lot of
yeah,
people into like hot rod Japanese cars, like
yeah.
hot
Japanese is
rod,
my thing.
like
Yeah,
Skyline GTRs and
yeah,
Celicas
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and WRXs and stuff like that. So, and then you get people like me. I'm child of the '70s, and they're taking Barracudas and Hemis and
yeah.
Stangs
Cool.
and stuff like that, and trying to hot rod those. But
That's cool, man. It's and you know what? It's for me, like, it's one thing I like always to say in my stories, because, you know, using cars and using that energy and traveling up and down the country, looking at cars and buying cars and flipping them, and that saved me from other bad habits. You know,
hmm.
so it's something that's very close to my heart still, and I still have my cars in the shed, and it's something that'll be always there. You know, but just continuing on from that, it was, you know, I guess at 19 or 20 years of age, I changed my college course. At the time, I was doing environmental science, and we are a farming background, and I actually didn't like the course, and I went into the next year of doing agriculture, so
Hmm.
agricultural science. So that was probably the first time, you know, where I felt that maybe I need to make a change, because I was at a level of acceptance at that time where I had my cars. I was a very chatty guy, I'll be honest. Like, I was reared in a bar, so I could talk to anybody. And I loads of friends that were females, and I'd loads of friends that were males. And sometimes then he had the same amount of female friends as males, and some of my male friends wouldn't have female friends because they wouldn't have the confidence, or, and it's not that I hadn't the confidence. I just was able to talk. Like, I never thought of
Yeah.
dreaming. It was always just friends, and that was it. I'd never see any different than that. But I was at a place where I was at that level of acceptance at the time, being at 330 pounds, where I have my cars, I have friends, the boys and girls. I don't need anything. I don't need a girlfriend, or I'm good. You know, I was like, I'm good. I don't need anything, and life is okay. Like, you know, and it's frightening to look back now, you know, at 20 years of age, at my prime, you could say, and literally thinking like that, you know. And that was my kind of mindset going into my second year of college, and that kind of changed drastically, because in Ireland, and the same in the US as well, our culture is like, in college, it's a little bit different to yourselves. Like in Ireland, how it works is we'd have a few drinks, a few pre-drinks at the, say, at a house or whatever. Then we go to a pub and have a few drinks, and everything be great crack, good conversation, everything right. But then the clock strikes 12 or 12 or 1 a.m. and then everyone goes to the club. And that was probably the worst time for me because all of my friends, which were guys, would go pull girls or they'd go chance girls or, try to
Mhm.
get out. And I would just feel like so lost, being honest.
Right, the
And
odd
I'd
man
have
out.
so much anxiety
Yeah.
in my chest. And I'm just like, I just felt like I was in the way there, if that made sense. And I was building up so much. And what I used to actually start doing was just leaving. And I got a nickname from my friends at the time called Disappearing Dave. And at the time, they didn't know any different. I used to tell them, oh, I got too drunk, or I met one of the guys, I went back to a house party, or, just lies, to be quite honest. I was telling lies, but
Mhm.
what I was actually doing was I was going home, I was going to getting a takeaway and getting a taxi home early and then going home by myself. And that started to get worse and worse over the night. So what actually happened over the space of 6 months was I started socializing less because it was making me feel worse. Every time coming home in the taxi, in the taxi, and when the taxi driver is asking, why are you going home so early? I was like, oh man, I have work in the morning. Another lie. I was like lying to myself totally, and it was just making me feel terrible. So there was epiphany. There always is epiphany, and for me, it was a Halloween fancy dress night in college. And that was the one night that I used to always enjoy because everyone was getting dressed up. No one was trying to like pull or, everyone was wearing whatever
Mhm.
costumes. I think I was wearing like a monk costume at the time, Joe, big thing covered over, like, and it was just a really fun night. And even that night, I came home early, and I just remember coming back to my apartment and just sitting at the edge of my bed, and I just saying to myself, because I was very close with my sister. There was only a year and a half between my sister, so we're really close. And even I used to ask her about girls things, or when I was 15, 16, I used to ask her about different things. Like, we're very, very close. I showed her how to drive. I showed her how to
Mhm.
drive a motorbike. I would like really we used to lean on each other a lot. And I just said to myself, at sitting at the edge of the bed, if she was here and I told her exactly what I was doing right now and how I feel, how would she feel? And she'd be extremely upset that what I was doing. So for me, that was the epiphany. That was the time for me to say, you know what, Dave, you have to change. And from that day on, everything I do to this day, to be quite honest with you, is to make her proud.
Wow.
And
So your sister was your inspiration to, like,
yeah,
that she wouldn't want you being by yourself. She wouldn't want you
yeah,
like being the odd man out, not feeling good about yourself. So that was your like catalyst to like
yeah.
your crucible moment to say, "Hey, what am I doing?" She wouldn't
That
want to
was,
see
you
you
could
like
say,
this,
my, absolutely, you could say that was my why, you could say,
right? Yeah.
and everything kind of fast forward from there. I put, I'm, I've a very stubborn personality. Once I put my mind to something, I will do it. And that was the most strongest why anyone could ever have. And 15 months, fast forward 15 months, I lost 125 pounds in 15 months, which was quite uh, drastic. It was very quick.
Wow.
Uh, and looking back right now, because I was as green as anyone else, I hadn't an iota. I didn't have an idea how about nutrition. I didn't have an idea about training as much. I played sports, but I didn't know anything about food or calories or macros or anything like that. And I could have done things looking back right now, and this is why I'm coaching today, is because some things I'd done right back then, I wouldn't dream of doing it right now, if that made sense. Under eating,
Yeah.
not eating enough calories, etc. But look, everything. If you ask me, everything's an experience, and that's why we're here today.
Yeah. So you took an approach and you just found your own way, but then you started to realize that maybe like the weight loss process, has to be sustainable, has to be
Yeah,
like in a healthy way. And it looks
yeah,
like you started to figure out like, well, there's a multiple legs. It's like your mental state, your spirit, like your soul, your
hundred
mind, your
percent.
body. Some people just
Yeah,
look at it as like, well, I'm just gonna bulk, I'm just gonna exercise.
yeah,
But if they've got like a limiting belief or some kind of problem in their head, in their mind, and they don't
Yeah,
solve that, they're going to probably continue to have problems because it's not just a body. It's like your heart,
100%.
your mind, soul, body, spirit, right?
100%. Like I always like to say to my clients is, and I use a bar as an example. It's like three legs of a bar stool. You have mind, nutrition, and training. The stool won't stand if you've only two. And what I done was I done the training, I done the nutrition. I never done anything up here. And
Mm,
that was the biggest takeaway for me because what I see, and people will be listening in and people will have tried to diet. Everyone just does the calories and everyone does the food. And they never do anything up here. And the most important thing is up here. This is the
mm,
most important thing that's going to get the lifestyle, the life lasting change, the long lasting change. So the stool won't stand if you don't have all three, and that's why we work with every area. We have an in-house psychotherapist on our program to do with the mental side of it. Because for me, I'm the perfect example of doing it the wrong way. I done the food, I done the training, I got in the best shape ever. You know, I lost 125 pounds in 15 months. 15 months later, I done my first photo shoot. I was ripped up and all, but if anyone saw me or saw the side by side, they'd be like, "Oh my god, that's incredible." And I'll never forget in 2016 when I was doing that photo shoot, I was looking at myself like, you need to improve this. You need to fix that here. You need to fix this. Not good enough here. So hypercritical of myself and just blinded by not being able to see what I've actually achieved. Why?
yeah,
Is because I never done anything up here. You always need to reflect and appreciate every step of the stage of your process. Why we say that is because when you do that, that's a milestone. And people look at a very surface level, to be quite honest with you. They say, oh, I want to lose 30 pounds. Great. What's that going to feel like? Oh, I'll lose two dress sizes. Great. But like, what is that going to feel like? Because what actually happens is when they actually get the two dress sizes, they kind of realize, oh, it's not as good as I thought because they done nothing up here. If anything triggers them or anything throws them off, they slip back into old habits because they've done nothing here. What we really try to do is work at everything up here so you actually get the confidence on yourself to move forward and keep going this way because you're not looking at the old you. Why I felt like that or was very hypercritical of myself, I was still looking at myself through the lens of 330 pounds. I
yeah,
was still looking at myself because why I'm saying that to you is because there was no balance. It was literally on or off. So I was literally like
yeah.
dieting, I was doing
No
my
gray.
thing, or it was like
Yeah,
literally in reverse, and there was no balance. And I was like, I used to say to myself at the time, was like, I've done all this like hard work and I look good, and but why am I like this? Like I thought it'd be like easier, or like not so like volatile. I felt like very volatile, like that. It was does it have to be like so volatile like this, And
yeah,
it's be- and it all, like, to be quite honest with you, it comes down to like self appreciation and self love, and
yeah.
this is where people like miss an awful lot is if you're going through a journey and if you're losing like a significant amount of weight, say even 30 pounds, 50 pounds, 100 pounds, like that's a life changing weight, you know, and that's a roller coaster of emotions in itself to go through that. And like so many people look at this through like the surface level of, oh, I look great going from like a triple XL t-shirt to a medium. That's
Hmm.
incredible. And I've been through that. And going from, a 40-inch waist to like a 30 or 32-inch waist. That's incredible.
Hmm.
But you have to be able to make sure that you feel as good up here and inside. Because it's very easy to work on the outer, but we have to work in the inner as well. So,
Yeah.
and
Your
why
mind's
I do,
eye might still see you as like 300 pounds or wherever you
yeah,
were. And
yeah,
then if a lot of times they're like, artists, we're very self-critical.
yeah,
So a lot of the artists I know, they're they're like really good, but then they deprecate themselves. They basically say they're not good.
yeah,
And so
100%.
then they don't appreciate what they have. And so a lot of times they build up all this work and
Yeah,
they only show somebody like they got 100 songs, they show somebody one. And usually it's the song that's safe. It's not the
yeah,
song that's actually them. they're too scared to show the real them,
Yeah,
the real you.
the real
And so
personality.
it's
Yeah,
really about like not loving yourself, not appreciating that everything doesn't have to be perfect. And in fact,
yeah,
that process as an artist and even a human, I think, like you go through the steps and
yeah.
you're right doing something right, and it's like you're gonna make mistakes. And if you down yourself for every mistake you make instead of seeing it as part of the journey, then you don't
Exactly.
appreciate the trip.
A
You know?
100%. It's very similar. And I think, it's very similar in many different ways. It's even from an athlete's perspective, if they're playing high level sport, it's you look at it from the same way. You know, we can all be extremely hard on ourselves when if we don't do any of the work up here. When we don't appreciate, like you said, the mistakes, and appreciate the like going off track a little bit and understanding why that happened. And it's about, for me, it's like what we like to teach our clients is like awareness, self-awareness on everything, because I like to look at it as a way of, if I can give you enough awareness on everything of why you do it, and make it really easy for you to say, like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense now. Like, why didn't I think of it that way before? Why am I feeling like this? Oh, this is why I'm feeling like this. Or why does that trigger me? Or maybe I need to take a step back from that so I'll be okay. It's understanding you. The more you can understand yourself, is the more you're going to understand everything of why you react to this. Because with emotional eating, for example, there's so many people, and there'll be so many people listening to this where it happens to them and they just move on. They're like, I don't really know why that happened, or it's like, oh, the bad day, I deserve that. But that happens again, 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 and again. We need to befriend that. And that's like one thing I'll always say is like, I am still an emotional eater. I never say I'm not an emotional eater. I just know how to
Mhm.
befriend it now. I understand it. So I know my trigger points. Like, for example, coming up to December, it's my sister's birthday, and she passed away in the 21st of January. So that time period is quite difficult for us, right? Christmas time, etc. So I know I need to take a step back and don't put too much pressure on myself during that time, because
Mhm.
I know I'll be on more edge. And people mightn't be able to resonate, but they will be able to resonate, because everyone goes through misfortune, everyone goes through something, right? It doesn't have to be grief. And there's going to be a tough time in a different time of the year, whatever happens. You just need to understand that better for yourself, to understand, okay, like, this brings back memories to me. This is kind of an uncomfortable time for me. I just need to be careful of myself and don't put myself under too much pressure at work, for example. Don't put myself under too much pressure, because what happens is some people love to put extra work on themselves. And for us, this was like, I think this is in everybody's, like, in everyone's genes, that, work harder, and, a busy mind is a better mind. And some of it's true. But we need to analyze why we're feeling like that as well, because eventually we're not going to continuously be able to work. We need to understand it and be able to break it down. And
Yeah.
that's very, very important. So it's better to have the awareness around every step, and have the awareness around that, because that's what's going to make you understand you better. So if you work late in work, or they call you in for overtime, that you don't get peed off and come back and just order takeout. It's like, oh, I deserve it. I worked overtime. Or if it's at the end of the week, if it's at the end of a week on a Friday night, it's like, I worked so hard this week, I deserve it. But you need to ask yourself, like, why are you telling yourself these things as well, and understand it. And honestly, that comes back to purpose. For us, I feel anyone that comes on our program, or anyone I actually talk to in general, and because we all know people that have done a program or has done some sort of a weight loss thing. I've tried umpteen before, my own journey, shakes, you name it, all different types of things, right? And they never really worked. And I always kind of wanted to understand why that was happening, or why people lose weight and they put the weight back on. There's a couple of things like we've talked about, and most importantly is purpose, is understanding, like, why you're doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
And for
You
me,
really have
as
to
in,
decide. Yeah, like you're saying, like if you don't know why you're doing it,
yeah,
like why do you like? A lot of people say, oh, "I want $1 million." It's like why?
Yeah, it's like
What
why?
is
Yeah,
it you're going to do with the $1 million?
exactly,
Is it that you really want peace of mind, right? Is it that you really want to be able to run your own business? It maybe doesn't take $1 million. So
exactly.
then, like, you got to start asking yourself, what do you want? Why do you want six pack abs? Why do you want to lose this weight? Well, maybe like I want to feel better. I want to be
Yeah,
healthier. Start asking the questions, like, and figure out what you're trying to do. And if you like
100%.
people go through the fad diets, like you said, if you could do something incrementally sustainable, that rather than some 10 step or 12 step or 15,
Yeah,
like if you know you could do this thing and you could do it for the rest of your life because it's an ongoing battle. Like a lot of times, if you choose to do something, I'm a cancer survivor, so I had to come up with, and got it when I
yes,
was like 27. I'm 56. There's certain things I had to decide to do, and I had to
yeah,
stay on that and kind of do that and not stop. I couldn't really stop. I had to stay on a certain path. And what is
for sure,
actually doable and what's not doable. I think
exactly.
if you can find something that you can do and it's not going to be something that you're just going to put on the shelf and it means something and you have a goal, then I think you can achieve it. But if you make it so impossible,
Yeah,
you're not going to do it. You're going to stop.
100%. I think that like you've hit the nail on the head. I think there's a couple of different issues, right? We have social media now, and we have this false persona of everything is literally false. If you ask me, in it, you know, people look at this, and the difference now for people is that people want it yesterday. They
Yeah.
want it straight away, and they'll do anything to get it. So like the losing 10 pounds in 7 days, or whatever it is, whatever gimmick it is, like they'll go for it, because
Yeah.
they want that speed. But I always bring it back again to the purpose. It's like anyone that comes on our program, anyone comes on board, we it's like an interview process, really, because we really want to actually find out why you're doing it in the first place and why it's important to you. So when the going gets tougher, there's times that you don't want to do it. That's what you need to be thinking about. So I always bring it back to, for example, a busy mom that has, three loving kids, and she's trying to look after all the family and look after her husband and everything, and she always comes last, and always the biggest thing. And you know, sometimes we have to get her to understand, why you do in the first place, because most people, they make it about themselves an awful lot. I know it's a very easy thing to say, but the difference is if she jumps up in the scales on a Friday or a Saturday, for example, she might freak out when she doesn't get the result she wants, and she makes it about herself, and she splurges out, or she implodes, for example. So we
Mhm.
just want to change that thought a little bit for a second. So we understand her purpose is like, okay, why are you losing the weight? So obviously you want to lose a few pounds yourself. Perfect. That's great. Surface level stuff. But it's like you want to lead example for your kids. You want to be the best mom there. You want to have energy for your kids. You want this to be the most like enjoyable time when they're growing up. Everything changes. So when it's not about her anymore, it's a bigger
Yeah.
picture.
Yeah.
When she jumps up in the scales again and just say she doesn't get the answer, she say, well, do you know what? I've done everything right this week. I have more energy. Everything is good. She doesn't implode. So it's not about her. That's the difference in getting true purpose. And that's what gets you a lifestyle change, is changing the whole purpose. And that's what we do, is to really get people to understand that, because,
I think that's important. Yeah, the focus. I mean, the focus, a lot of people, they lose focus because they have all these influencers and all these
yeah,
like 30
yeah,
second, 90-second reels telling everybody, like you said, you can get it yesterday. And
yeah,
everything that I ever dealt with, in my business, I'm a software designer, and in my music and in my podcasting is like there are podcasters that typically stop after 12 episodes if they
yeah,
don't get what they wanted. It's like, well, what did you
yeah.
want?
They
And
want the
my whole
flex.
point, yeah, and my whole point with I told people, it's like, well, why are you doing all these podcasts? Why do you do it? I said, well, I kind of look at it as oral lessons are how human beings learn. And whether I was going to make money with this thing or not, but I've had over 1,000
Yeah,
hours of talking to human beings.
Incredible.
And it's like a master class with the world.
Yeah,
And if you think of like every experience that you have with those people, whether you hit the number on some chart isn't the point. The experience of actually talking to the person is the point, because
absolutely.
that exchange in ideas actually makes me better, and it helps them
For
too.
sure.
And so
Yeah,
that's the goal. But a lot of people they miss that. They say, "Well, I didn't get where I wanted on this chart
yeah,
after 12 episodes." Well, it's something that you got to decide, why are you doing it?
for sure. Like I couldn't agree more. Like I always say, like we live in a world of flexes now. It's like, earn 10 grand, make 10K in a month now by doing this course, or if I can lose 20 pounds in 2 weeks, like all these like all these basic unrealistic kind of measures that you might get it, but how sustainable is it? And what actually happens is the majority of people that come to me and the majority of people that I talk to is they're after using like 3 and 4 different coaches, or have tried 3 or 4 different things. And the sad thing is, like, they say to me, Dave, like, I feel like there's something wrong with me because they've lost the weight, they put the weight back on, they've lost the weight, put the weight back on, or is there something wrong with my body? And I'm just, it's sad, because that's the persona people have now from doing all this type of, and people think there's more of an issue with them than there actually does not. It's just really actually finding finding something sustainable, number one, and finding the real purpose for them to get the lifestyle change. Because when you have true purpose, that's what's really going to get you to where you want to be long term. And that's the most important thing for me. That's why we call it the lifestyle blueprint here, because we really want to get the lifestyle change. For me, I'd be telling you a lie right now if I was doing the same thing when I was 330 pounds. I'm absolutely not. And I'm not going to tell anyone that, saying, oh, you can eat whatever you want. You can, no, it doesn't work like that. There's going to be some sacrifice.
There's
Yes, we
always a
can work
cost.
around it. Of course. Yes, there's going to be sacrifice. But we can make it suitable as much as we can. But we're going to change everything up here, so you're going to look at it differently anyway, and you're going to see yourself differently. You're going to appreciate yourself more, because I always say the training and the nutrition is just a byproduct of everything else. Because when you feel better in yourself and you get that self-love and appreciation for yourself, your work, your relationships, your friends, how you approach yourself, how you look at yourself, like your life changes. And sometimes people, I suppose they don't look at it from that perspective. They know, "Oh, I'm going to look so good in like a smaller
It's very
t-shirt," but
surface. Like
so
you said, it's
surface.
it's so surface. It's really the negative self-talk and limiting beliefs. A lot of people say, "Well, that's foo-foo. That's whatever." It's like, but that's the core. Like the one thing I've
100%.
learned with all these talks is like all the artists I've ever met, all the therapists and life coaches I've met have totally focused on negative self-talk, limiting beliefs, like looking in glass, looking in the mirror, and taking
Yeah,
that self-assessment, and actually coming to the same kind of conclusion you're coming to. That's like, you got to
100%.
do something that's sustainable. You got to know why you're doing it, and you have to
100%.
have an idea that, like, understanding that this is a lifelong thing you need to do till you're not here. That,
100%.
and nothing ever is like easy. It's always hard to get out of codependency. It's always hard to get where you want to go. Like, there's all these stories about people do it overnight, but it's really no overnight sensation. Everybody has actually done a lot of hard work, and then they spin it,
Absolutely.
and they
Yeah,
spin it
for
and they
sure.
make you feel guilty because you didn't do it, but they didn't tell the full story.
It's funny you say it, because there's for me, like, I get so many people that come to me and they say, Dave, you understand it. And I always ask them, what do you mean by that? Oh, you have been through it, so you understand how I feel some days. You understand how I feel when I'm struggling. Because most of the coaches that they had, were born with a six pack, or they can't resonate. they can't resonate with the ups and downs of being overweight or experience what that is. Or for example, like walking into a busy crowd, or walking into a new environment, how that feeling is of you thinking what people are looking at me, or they're looking at my size, or we all felt it before. And the thing is like being able to resonate with people. One thing I would say is I don't work with bodybuilders. I don't work with like bikini girls or like girls that want to look good on holidays. Like I'll say it out there. I love working with people that really want to get the lifestyle change that I can see myself in. And that's the most important thing for me, because I feel like I'm a part of the journey then. Because that's what gives me purpose, is being a part of that journey to get that lifestyle change, because it's priceless to me then. That is the most important angle of it for me. And just coming back to the mindset side of it, I guess, my journey, I guess, really, really started for me is when I lost all the weight and I was looking the best at that photo shoot. That's when my journey really started, because this is when I started to work with the mindset. And yeah, 6-7 years later of doing it continuously is, you could literally say I'm like a literally qualified a therapist as well at this stage. But I love to, yeah,
it's core to
I love,
everything. Is like, if you
it's
don't
experience. Yeah.
deal with like a lot of times when I talk to people, there's so much noise that I tell people that they're, whether you're creative or at work, it's like you need to kind of step away and find the quiet. Because if you can't, in the quiet, you can refocus. But if your mind's all cluttered with all this noise, whether it's the
negativity.
noise of limiting beliefs or the noise of other people you're trying to compete with, like you have to kind of find some peace and find a way to get that peace, exercise or walk, or just give yourself some breathing exercise or something to give yourself, not to focus on your problem, not to get your mental state, to give yourself some time. And I think a lot of people today are so connected that they don't give themselves that space, and you really need the space to actually contemplate.
Absolutely. Like, you said something very interesting there, is like, I call it the monkey mind, because you feel like you've so many monkeys running around with negative emotions in your mind, and you just can't think. You just can't, you can't concentrate. So it's very easy for us to dwell and to be worried and to worry too much and overthink when we've so much of that going on in our mind. And for me, I like to look at it from a logical perspective. And why I'm saying this is because I've been through this. I've done this myself. This is all part of building self-love and appreciation for yourself. And this is what we do in the program, is we show you how to become your own best friend. Why? Is because you tell your best friend only the best advice. If they ask you any questions, you give them the best advice you could give. You're not going to tell them anything you didn't want to tell them, or be mean to them or anything like that. They're your best friend. You love them. So you have to become your own best friend. And how you become that is, like, the way I like to do it is I create an imaginary friend. The imaginary friend is you, your logical mind, for example. But I always give it a name that we don't know. And anytime you've all these like crazy thoughts coming into your mind, it's like, ask your best friend, for example, Jeff is my best friend. Ask Jeff, is that true? It's like, no, Dave, you're a successful online coach. You're helping thousands of people. It's like, oh, that makes sense to me. I'm okay again. And building that up, it's like training. It's like in the gym, you have to train that. It doesn't just happen overnight. You have to train that. Now, Jeff is not there at half as much anymore, to be quite honest, because I've trained it so much. And it didn't happen overnight, I'll be honest with you. But in a different tense, it's just basically talking to yourself very logically. What's the truth in that limiting belief? Tell me, where's the truth? Where's the proof of that? Some people say, oh, I can't, I'm not good enough at that. It's like, yeah, if that's what you're believing, you're going to believe that. That's what's going to happen, for sure. But like, show me the truth. Like, where's the truth? It's like, they can never do it. They can never give me the factual proof of it. And it's like, you're just telling yourself stories. you know?
Yeah, a lot of people feel they don't deserve love or they don't deserve this, and
Yeah,
they're their own worst enemy. I guess so many people I've talked to artists and painters. I walk into their loft, I see all this work. I said, "Did you put this in the gallery?" No, I'm not good enough. And I'm like,
yeah,
looks good enough to me. It's like, but they won't even give themselves a shot because they have that voice telling them, "Oh, it's not good enough. The next one will be better," and then they never self
never happens.
actualize. They
Yeah,
never actualize, and that happens like not just to artists. It happens to everyday people. They have the same
100%.
mindset, and to me, it's like there's nothing wrong. It's not arrogant to put your voice out there, to go
Oh,
and
oh,
say something. But so many people are so afraid of their own voice.
yeah.
They're scared what people are
It's
gonna hate it, and they're gonna hate it themselves. Well, it's like, and then like, well, how can this person say that? Well, because they've got to the point where they actually love themselves and give themselves permission to be able to speak. And some people feel it's like, well, I don't have a right to do that. It's like, well, you're a human being on the planet. I think you have a right to do speak your mind. And
for sure.
a lot of people never learn that.
No, for sure. And you know, it's funny when you're just saying that, like it just brings it hits every angle, you know, like it hits every area of your life. And like just when you're saying that, you know, even for me, like we get so many guys and girls that come to us, you know, in their late 20s, early 30s that, you know, have the job, have a great career, you know, they're ticking the boxes, but they haven't found their partner yet, or they're struggling with the partner because a lot of guys see what I've been through, and a lot of guys come to me that need to lose a couple of extra pounds, and the confidence is low, and there's a big issue in that, and that's what my heart is very close to, because you know I was been there, you know, and just with the self love thing, just to bring back at that, is like that can affect everything, you know, because even for me when I lost the weight and I was looking great, like that like roller coaster of emotions. For example, this is just another wave of the journey, is that, you know, going from being unnoticed by the opposite sex, like, you know, being at your heaviest, like never being noticed, for example, to actually getting noticed. And look, I'm no Tom Cruise, like, you know, so it's the thing is like that's overwhelming. That was overwhelming for me to experience that, to actually
Hmm.
like, and that was hard. That was hard. And like this is what people won't talk about, because that's what they'll experience as well. And you need to have the self love in
Yeah,
yourself
yeah,
up there, because I was in relationships with good looking girls, for example, and I was like, what the hell is she doing with me? Like,
yeah. You still don't
what does
see
she
it.
self love like? And if there was a row, if there was an argument, I'd walk. I was like,
Just
sure,
what? Because you
there's
didn't
never
think you
good,
deserved her. That's the thing. It's like if
never,
you don't think you deserve it, then the same thing happens with somebody like in business. If
yeah,
they don't really think they deserve the position, they kind of self sabotage and they say, "Well, see, I didn't really deserve it." So they end
100%.
up walking out of that too because they don't they don't feel they should really be there. And so then
Yeah, they don't
even if
back
they
themselves.
get it, they've messed it up. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
why did that happen? Well, because look in the mirror. It's like it's not the other guy that did it. You did it. It's like so, like that's a hard that
100%.
lesson to learn. You know.
Yeah, 100%. And like, it just comes back to exactly, it affects every area of your life, you know, from relationships to work to business to, you know, to your own, like, whatever you're passionate about. It's like, for example, you're saying with the musicians, like with their work. Some guys, like, I know guys like have, even for me, incredible cars, for example. It's like, geez, you should send that into a page and show it off. Like, no, Jesus, no. No, it would be good enough for that. And that's for the car, for example. But that's all down to the reflection on yourself.
Yeah.
You
And there are
know,
guys,
it's
they'll probably show cars that you're like, well, that's not as good as mine. Well, that
yeah,
shows you that there are musicians because they got the guts and they got
yeah,
they're rambunctious. It's like they might not be as technically as good as the guy sitting in the room that is amazing, but he won't show his work. So a guy
yeah,
that's not technically not as good, but has the courage to go out, and even though he's not as good, He's not Jimmy Page. He's not Hendrix. He's not Jim Morris, but he's willing to put himself out there. And then people are like, well,
100%.
how's he doing? Because he believed in himself.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. Is a lot of times there are people that aren't technically as good as as wow. They're not, but they have that something where they're willing to put themselves out there.
Yeah.
And that's
100%.
the difference. It's a mental kind of thing. It's like if you're willing to get over the fear, you can get there.
100%. It's like a block. It's like a block and that's why I always say, the nutrition and the training is just a byproduct of everything else, of how this is actually going to change your life. And it's the truth. Like, and that's the way people should, if they're going on a journey or going on a weight loss journey or whatever it is, they need to look at it from that perspective, not from, oh, I'm just going to lose 30 pounds or I'm going to look good in my drop 2 dress sizes for Christmas. Like I give a perfect example is, I was talking to a lady yesterday and she's like, oh, I want to, look good for my Christmas party. I was like, oh, incredible. She wanted to sign up. And I was like, how is that going to feel? Oh, it's going to feel great. It's going to feel so nice. And I'm like, okay, but how is that going to feel? And she kind of was like, she didn't know what to say to me. But I was like, this is how it should feel. You should put on your dress, and that dress should look so good that you feel so good in yourself. I want you to imagine of what your other half sees when his jaws hits the ground when he sees you in that dress, when he's besotted by how you look. And then when you go to the bar or go to the function, it's how your friends view you, how that's going to make you feel. Because if you visualize it like that, when it happens in that night, you'll appreciate. That's the milestone. That's what you
Mm-hmm.
remember. But just looking good for the dress that night, it'll just
Yeah,
fade
what's
off.
that do? Yeah, what's that do? Because then
This
you're
is
gonna
the
get
milestone.
disappointed. Yeah,
This
because then
this
you're
is
not
why
gonna be
people.
disappointed. You're right. Like if you don't actually like you have the why or like what are you doing? Like why are you doing it?
Yeah,
Then it's like it's easy to shoot it down. Like because then
100%.
suddenly like you're like it's like why did you want that $1 million? Now you want $2 million. Well, what did you
Yeah,
want the $1 million for?
yeah,
Because now it's like, well, it didn't actually solve the problem. There's actually other problems. So what is the
100%.
core thing that the problem is? Why I want to be independent and I want to, but if you go on the train and you put yourself out there, then suddenly like, well, you made $1 million, but now you owe $3 million.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? So
Like for sure. Like you know, these are the milestones that people need to like feel and visualize and experience, because that's what they're going to remember. That's what's going to build the self-belief. That's what's going to build the self-confidence to make them move forward. That's the most important. That's what's going to help give the lifestyle change. They're that's the milestones that's going to, each milestone is going to like reinforce who you are every time, because it's not surface. It ain't surface then. And your identity is changing. You're changing how you look at yourself, how you feel about yourself, where it's, oh, I look great in the dress. It's an Irish thing, right? It's probably in America as well, but it's like we have a department store, like it's called Pennies. It's like you get fairly nice clothes there, but it's quite cheap. But it's such an Irish thing where, like, especially for females, it's like they might have got a nice coat, right? And so everyone will like compliment them on it, like, oh, you have a beautiful coat. Oh, she got a Pennies. Oh, got in Pennies, like, this is the mindset, right?
yeah, it's
And
like
they just
Sears
brush it
or
off.
like here it's
They
like it
brush it
was
off.
like Sears. Like if you got it at Sears,
Sears, yeah,
it's not like
yeah,
you
yeah.
got it at Macy's. You didn't get
It's
it at
like, yeah, oh,
Macy's.
sure, I
You
got it
didn't
in
get it
Sears,
in
but
New York. So it's like
they
it's not
brush it
really
off.
the thing.
They brush it off, right? But if someone said, "Oh, that quote's horrible," then they remember that. That's what they
Yeah.
remember. It's not the compliments. Instead, they should be saying, "Yeah, it's fucking amazing." Instead of saying, "Yeah, I actually love this quote. It's amazing." Not brushing it off. Appreciate it. Appreciate the compliment. Take the compliment.
Or
And
also it's
that's,
like, yeah, you could wear something. And it really doesn't matter where you got it from, but it's
yeah, it
how
doesn't
you
matter.
wear it or how you put it together then suddenly like
Absolutely.
people look amazing, but they're wearing
Yeah.
all this vintage clothes or something they got from a shop somewhere, and it's
Yeah.
not from Macy's, and it's not from New
Yeah.
York, and it's not from Paris, but they
Absolutely.
had a sense of style and
Yeah.
they put something together, and then it's like them, and
And it's the
that
most,
is a
it's for
you know
sure. And like the most important thing is what I'm really getting at is like to take the compliment, for them to take it, because we
yeah,
don't like to take compliments, you know. It didn't matter. Like
so
that's what I was mostly trying to get at is like really appreciate that where people they just keep brushing it off, like they don't want to take a compliment, but they remember when something is said bad to them.
oh
You
yeah, well
know, they
then
keep
people
working
will
off.
be like, oh, I'm not that pretty. If somebody says they're
Yeah,
pretty, like you're beautiful, oh, I'm not. No, my sister's more prettier than me. My best friend's prettier than me. Like if you do that, then you never,
yeah, it's the same
yeah,
thing.
where do you end up? You end up in that
Yeah,
place like you're talking about.
it's just like it's always about the reflection. It's always like a reflection of themselves. Is like you said, it's looking at that mirror every time. If you're looking at your mirror every time saying you're not that pretty, you're not that beautiful, like so you're going to believe it,
Yeah, and if
you
you
know.
believe in that limiting belief, it keeps you from everything. Like you could go into every program, you could be going and get the six pack abs, or you could get into the
100%,
dress. But if you go to the party and say, "Well, I'm not as beautiful as Mary," after all the
100%,
work you did, and that you still don't think you're as good as Mary because Mary's all
100%.
that, then it's like, well, you
Absolutely.
could be all that too, but you just don't believe it. You know?
Absolutely. Like I always say, you know, in life, you know, the biggest the biggest thing that's going to stop you is yourself. That's the biggest thing that's going to stop you. There's nothing else going to stop you. But if you believe in yourself, like you said, like the artists that have the guts or have the courage just to go for it. It doesn't matter even how good they are. It's actually they're going to where there's probably amazing artists there that don't have it and they're not getting to where what they want, for example. You know,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
that's the difference.
yeah, because I mean, I've talked to authors and they
Yeah,
put themselves out there, and initially they didn't believe in themselves, and then suddenly they've got the confidence, and then they've sold like tons of books, and they before that point they really didn't think they could, but then they have some epiphany, and then they realize it's my voice, and I shouldn't be trying to compare it to Stephen King or
totally.
somebody else.
Yeah,
It's like I need to just say what I need to say, and then put it out there in the world, and then get behind it. You get behind it and believe in it. And if you actually show that level of confidence, then it's like the law of attraction.
yeah,
Like if you don't believe in yourself, then people will be down on you. And those like the
absolutely.
down will gather. But if you have the confidence, it seems to draw people. It's like, well, that person's is drawing this energy. And then the
Yeah,
energy comes around you and then you can build off of it. And that
100%.
starts from like not being into the limiting belief, you know. It's
I,
not
I always
arrogance, right? It's not arrogance. People
absolutely. Oh, 100%. Like I think that you know you've hit the nail on the head. Is for me like going through my journeys when in Ireland, like it's say in America or to worry or dwell. We always say it's you know in Ireland where I think it's okay to dwell. And what I mean by dwell is like, for example, you could be driving your car and like in your head, you're like, oh, I have to pay that bill. I have to sort that next week. It's like, tut, tut, you know, this kind of, that's not right. And like, I always thought that was normal. It's not normal. That is not normal. And the most important thing is, like you said, is to really actually working and getting at that higher level. Because if you're at that lower level of frequency, with all that negativity around you, there's nothing most likely like that's going to be a reflection on yourself. But if you're getting away from that and getting out of the monkey mind, as I say, and like becoming your best friend, you're at a higher frequency. So you're looking at yourself, it's a reflection. So you're looking at yourself better, you're backing yourself more, you're approaching people more better, you're yourself. You know, you don't feel like there's anxiety there, or you don't think you're good enough to be in that circle, for example, whatever it is. You know, it's how you actually look at yourself, and that's where you're going to be at, like you said, higher frequency, and there's going to be more positivity comes towards you.
yeah, you don't hide, you don't run away. Like a lot of times, like if
100%.
you got that limiting belief, you kind of showed it where you would go home, you'd stay by
Yeah,
yourself, you know,
absolutely.
and that's where that's the mistake that people make, is because they think, well, I'm not good enough to be in the crowd. I'm
Yeah,
not, worthy. And so, like,
yeah,
until you get past that, you're gonna still be in that cycle. And it's like I love being able to talk like people like yourself who are life coaches and people who can help people with
yeah.
your ideas of empowerment. And I do want to encourage the audience again, because we're at the end of the hour, to go check out your Instagram, Instagram.com/Dave_Kennedy_TLB. Click on that and start your journey in the right way. Talk to someone who's going
Appreciate
to
it.
ask you like why you want to do it. And
100%.
that's not a fad. That's like trying to actually solve the issue.
100%. And like the most important thing for us is, I always say to everyone that comes on board, is like, this has to work for you, not me. I can tell you train 10 times a week, eat 10 meals a day, and you could be like, yeah, no problem, Dave. But in the back of your mind, you're like, when is this over? That's never going to work. That's never
Yeah.
going to work. So it's our job to make this work around your life, your business, your day to day, how that works. If you're traveling, if you're overseas, if you're on the plane twice a week, whatever it is, it's our job to make this as easy as possible to work for you. Because I always say to any of our clients is, we want you saying, oh geez, like, this is doable, this is easy. If
Hmm.
it's like that, there's going to be a longevity in it. You're going to see yourself doing it longer. So that's the most important thing for us, and we really try to break that down, because everybody's individual. Everyone has different. Everyone's life is different. Everyone's job is different. The mindset, everything. Everyone is different. So it has to look at it from an individual basis all the time, and that's key.
Well, that's a really good approach. I think that's like the person to person approach, where
one Hundred percent.
you actually check out what people are telling you, you listen, and you provide like the individual approach. It's not the cookie cutter approach. It's like
It has to.
individual approach. And
It
I appreciate what you're doing. I think people ought
one
to
Hundred
check
percent.
you out. And like I said, we were on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. This will be on all the podcast platforms that people are familiar with, from Apple to Spotify, iHeartRadio. We're on all the major platforms. So that will be available tomorrow. We're live again on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. And I want to thank you again for being on the program.
I thank you very much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good, I think it's probably daytime there versus nighttime here.
Yeah, it's
But
11
thank
a.m. here.
you. Yeah, thank
Thank you
you.
very much. See
Have a
you.
good day.
See you later.